Well, I don't need to really defend the product because I think actually if you read the article and you read the detail in the article, I mean, it actually starts and it states with, while this doesn't mean that vaping has the same degree of cancer risks as smoking does, it implies that vaping may have negative health impacts. However, we've never said that vaping is completely risk-free. And we've always said that it is 95% safer than smoking, which it is. We accept that further research needs to be done. And actually, we welcome studies into the health impact of vaping, as we want to give every former smoker the full confidence that vaping is considerably safer than smoking. And that's the important message.
But that's about the former smokers. What about the young people who are taking up vaping, Robert? It's better not to vape. It's better not to vape at all, and we know why they take up smoking, because you lure them into your shops with silly flavours called bubble gum. Well,
we can get into the flavour debate. That's no problem at all, because adults like flavours. Particularly I love squashy sweets. These products, and let's be absolutely clear, are not for children. They are an age-gated product that are for adults only. And that is exactly who they should be sold to.
I'm so sorry, Rob, we've run out of time, but hopefully this research will show that they certainly are not for children.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial.
With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get.
Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
Hello there. Headliners is in just a moment, but first at 11 o'clock, here's the latest GB News. And the UK's largest water company has been left racing to secure funding after its investors withdrew a £500 million lifeline that was due at the end of this month. It's after Thames Water handed out millions of pounds worth of dividends to shareholders and bonuses to its top executives. Well, now bosses have admitted their cash crisis could lead to the firm's emergency nationalisation. And to plug the major funding gap, shareholders, which include foreign wealth funds from China and Abu Dhabi, want to increase customers' bills, something the regulator has so far pushed back on. Well, the water giant is also facing a backlash from campaigners who've said they have discharged mind-boggling quantities of untreated sewage into the Thames, some 72 billion litres, in fact, between 2020 and 2023. The United Nations is calling on Rishi Sunak today to scrap his Rwanda scheme. The organisation's Human Rights Committee says the government's plan to send asylum seekers on a one-way trip to the East African nation should be abandoned or repealed if it passes in Parliament. In a report, 18 member states raised concerns of discrimination and potential violations of international law. Well, the government has pushed back today, however, accusing the United Nations itself of double standards, citing that it already sends refugees to Rwanda. Now, some developing news coming to us from Buckinghamshire this evening in the south of England, in fact, from Milton Keynes. We understand from police a Section 34 dispersal order has been put in place following what they're calling a major incident of antisocial behaviour involving around 300 children and teenagers in a shopping centre. Take a look at these pictures if you're watching on television. This order, issued after a large-scale gang fight, remains in place across central parts of the city for another hour until midnight. And Thames Valley Police issued the order following a large-scale fight. As we said, a spokesperson from the force said officers will continue to conduct high visibility controls and patrols throughout the city throughout the night. The former Celebrity Big Brother winner Stephen Bear has been ordered to pay back more than £22,000 he made from sharing a private video on his OnlyFans account. The 34-year-old could face 9 months in prison if he fails to comply within 3 months. He's also got to pay £5,000 in compensation to reality TV star Georgia Harrison. Speaking outside court, she said earning so much from image-based sexual abuse is abhorrent. Bear has already served time behind bars after being found guilty of voyeurism and 2 counts of disclosing private sexual photographs and films. Over 600 Border Force officers at Heathrow Airport are set to go on strike for 4 days, beginning on the 11th of April. In a vote, 90% of union members at the UK's busiest airport backed the walkout over new shift pattern changes. The PCS union suggests the changes could see as many as 250 staff forced out of their jobs. They're therefore demanding the plans be withdrawn, calling it unprofessional and inhumane treatment of staff that they say are critical to national security. That's the news. For the latest stories, do sign up to GB News Alerts. Scan the QR code on the screen right now or go to gbnews.com/alerts. But now it is time for Headliners.
Thanks, Polly. Hello and welcome to Headliners. I'm Nick Dixon, taking you through tomorrow's top stories for the next hour, and I'm joined by the always delightful Cressida Wetton.
Thank you.
I don't want to hear it.
And the always available Lewis Schaefer.
Hey.
It wasn't so bad. It wasn't so bad.
Could have been a lot
worse.
worse. That could have been a lot worse.
No, that's pretty bad to say always available.
I mean, we're all available, to be fair.
No, we're not. Some people are actually busy and working, and Cressida's busy and working.
Right.
You're
But
super
no one
busy.
in this
Thanks,
room.
Lewis.
Yeah.
Well, you're all looking great. You all look slightly colour coordinated as well.
You think?
Yeah, yeah.
Well, blue.
You're naturally merging together in a
Do you know, that's what
disturbing way.
That's it. It's completely
You
unplanned.
synchronised
Oh,
with
my
Lewis.
God, I'm turning into Lewis.
All right, well, we'll get into that in a minute, but let's have a quick look at Friday's front pages. So, The Telegraph has PM under fire after honour for top donor. The Guardian, famine is setting in. UN court orders Israel to unblock Gaza aid. The Express, disgrace, fat cat water bosses under fire. The Times, clean your own mess, Thames Water told. Very Jordan Peterson. The Eye, taxpayers may be forced to bail out Thames Water as customers face 40% hike in bills. We'll get into that in a minute. And finally, the Daily Star, the full Nelson, which is about Storm Nelson, which I'm sure you felt the force of. Those were your front pages. All right, Cressida, let's kick off with the Eye. We're doing the Eye, strangely.
We are doing the Taxpayers may be forced to bail out Thames Water as customers face 40% hike in bills. So bosses at Thames Water have hit a dead end with shareholders over a much-needed investment. They're not going to give them any more money. So it looks like they might go bankrupt. That's one of the possibilities. They're in almost £15 billion worth of debt. To quote Mr. Schaefer, $1 billion here, $1 billion there. Pretty soon, it's
real money.
Real money. So they're in real money debt.
I didn't make that up, but that's...
It's an old phrase. It sounds a lot to the layman. I mean, they bailed out Bulb, which was $3 billion. This is nearly $15 billion.
Starting to sound cheap. $3 billion, yeah.
It's pretty scary stuff, isn't it? Because remember The Big Short, when at the end it says, do you know what, the only thing Michael Burry's investing in now, water. You feel like if people... I mean, they're talking about 15 million customers could lose water, so they have to do this. They have to put it into temporary measures. I mean, if they didn't, can you imagine the chaos? What do you think, Lewis?
It would be total chaos. I really don't understand. I don't understand how they can be down 15 billion. I don't understand how they can... Where are they getting the money from? It's a public service. It has to be owned by the... Even I'm saying this. I can't believe I'm saying this, and I'm a libertarian. I think it's insane that the water supply... It's like something out of Chinatown. Remember in Chinatown?
Oh, yeah.
Remember that, where they said, who owned the water supply?
Yeah.
And they said, well, Mr. Cross owned the water supply with Mr.
I've watched it about 6 times. I still don't understand the water plot, but it was something to do with water, yeah. I know what you mean. You sort of end up like a communist because you're going, surely this has to be nationalised if this is going to happen.
Yeah.
But, of course, Labour have already ruled out doing that, although some other people, Rebecca Long-Bailey, have said the Thatcherite privatisation has been an abject failure. I mean, it is sort of hard to argue against at this point.
So this 40% hike in bills, that's just regardless of whether they get bailed out or not? Or is that the answer to the...
I think that's when they get bailed
so
out.
Even if we can have a whip round for £15 billion, we're still going to have more expensive water?
Yeah, basically, we're turning into the third world and everything's collapsing.
Yeah, but at 40%, it sounds like a lot of money now, but it's by 2030, which is 6 years from now, and the way inflation's going, 40%, I think people are going to be happy if it was, in any case, 40.
The problem is with percentages, it always goes up, doesn't it, whatever, because even if inflation's higher, the percentage will be higher. It's not 40 quid, it's 40%, you know what I mean? Yeah. Anyway, maybe I misunderstood your point, but I don't know. It's very disturbing. Oh well, I'm not sure we can do much more on that.
Oh well.
Well, yeah, we're gonna lose water or pay loads. I mean, what can I say?
Lol.
Yeah, let's have a quick look at the what else are we doing? We've done the Eye. That's not really a paper. Let's do another non-paper, the Guardian.
The Guardian.
I should be more objective. They're all papers. They're all.
Well,
great
it is a
papers.
paper. I actually picked it up the other day, and it was quite hefty. So it's an
they
actual
fill it with
thing.
something.
It's filled with something. Mostly, it's propaganda. It's Team World's propaganda vehicle in this country. But this is good news. Famine is setting in. The UN court orders Israel to unblock Gaza aid, and this is the case that was brought by South Africa, which is very close by and has a lot at stake here. But they're getting on Israel's case. Thank God. All I have to say, thank God Josh isn't here. Because he'd go
yeah,
mental.
because we can say our real views.
Well, my real views, I hate to say it, they basically match what Josh says, except I realize I'm on a loser.
Except a slightly less shouty version of the same view.
Well, I'm shouting on the inside.
Okay.
But they also said in this International Court of Justice, they also said that the Palestinians should give up the hostages. So...
It's just it's a non-story in that respect, isn't it? Or it's not a non-story, but it's a non. It's like saying more of good things, less of bad things.
Right. But is there a development in the... Well, yeah, the UN are always trying to pressure Israel, so that's not really new. The one new thing I saw recently, I'm sure we probably covered it on another night, was that Trump was even saying they have to finish up this war and that Israel are losing the world and losing people in terms of the PR.
They are totally right about this thing, because this thing, basically what Israel has done is they've tried to be nice about it. They should have just, whatever they were going... I'm against what they're doing, because I am a New York Jew and I'm in favor of dying and being sent to the gas chambers without causing any trouble. But what
I would apologise, but I'm not sure what you just said. So.
No, it's like that story, the two Jews facing the firing squad about to be shot to death. And one says, where's my last cigarette? I get a last cigarette. You're about to shoot me to death. I get a last cigarette. And the other Jew says, shh, don't make trouble.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
I'm the don't make trouble kind of Jew. What Israel is trying to do is they're trying to. I'm going to get letters. Please don't hate me.
If you're a don't make trouble kind of Jew, I'd hate to be the other one. That's all I'm going to say. Let's have a look at the Telegraph question before we get in more trouble.
Was that too much?
No,
probably, but it's late.
PM under fire after honour for top donor. So, Rishi has given a knighthood to Egyptian-born billionaire Mohammed Mansour, who was the Egyptian transport minister under Hosni Mubarak. And they're saying this is going to spark controversy. Isn't that always the case whenever they give out any of these awards?
Well, yeah, because he donated $5 million to the Tories.
Well, yeah, OK, there's that. But
I mean, I hate to say it's related. I'm sure he's just a great guy.
But isn't it bound for controversy? That's the point you're making. The whole system is this way. It's been this way forever. If you helped the king out 300 years ago, you got a dukedom or a lordship or something like that.
Right.
And this is the exact same thing. So people should just. This is the country that you have in this. This is the way it is.
Hang on though, because look, he's part of the King's Foundation and he donated to a memorial for COVID victims. That's all stuff that you'd think they'd.
Do you know the one that really bothers me, is Christopher Nolan got one. His films don't make sense, guys.
Yeah.
They don't make sense. He relies on Batman, the pre-established character we all love.
But he's English, right?
Yes. But the non-Batman ones, they don't make any sense. Inception, what was the other one after he had? Tekken or something. Wasn't Tekken, that's a computer game. Do you remember the one beginning with T?
I didn't
Tenet?
see it, no.
I haven't seen it.
Everyone says it doesn't make sense. I haven't even watched it. But it didn't make sense, all right? That's what I heard.
Yeah, but the truth is he's bringing money into the country.
Yes.
And that's what matters.
Exactly, and Rishi can't have Frank Hester's money anymore, can he? So he's got to get some other rich friends to donate to the party.
I just want to apologise to Christopher Nolan. I was only joking. It's only because I knew even less about the other guy than I did about Nolan. I just thought it was
Christopher Nolan loves headliners.
Yeah, he loves headliners.
Yeah.
Imagine if he directed it, though. Actually, Lewis's parts would be the same, but everything else would be different. Let's do the Daily Star then, Lewis.
Oh, well, this is a storm brings snow, sleet, rain, 70-mile-an-hour winds, and a pollen bomb. Happy Easter, folks. It's still March. You know, even in this country, it's still cold and miserable and rainy, and so they're just saying it's going to have a couple of days of cold, miserable, and rainy. This country doesn't get enough cold. It doesn't get enough miserable. Well, it gets miserable, but it doesn't get enough bad weather. I'm from New York. In New York, it's like you get weather. This country is cheap with the weather.
sheep with the
Well,
weather.
you say that was very windy. This man's umbrella's broken. That's just what it was like today. It was quite dramatic out there.
Did you feel like you might be knocked over? Because even
Yes,
I
I
did.
did.
Luckily, I put on some weight, pretty solid, and I thought, it's not going to get me this one. But some of our smaller members of staff, one of our producers, I thought, he's going to get carried away like Mary Poppins.
I saw a man with a toddler on his shoulders when I went out earlier, and I thought that was very brave.
Dangerous. Very much stupid. It's right on the line.
Unless it's a child, then you could say, well, the child's brave for getting on the guy's shoulder, but for the guy, I think this just shows the guy. I mean, this is the Daily Star. He's got his whatchamacallit is broken. His umbrella's broken.
And spirit.
And well, we don't know about that.
OK. Well, thanks for explaining to the radio listeners that his umbrella is indeed broken. That is it for part one. But coming up, boring starmer has no money. Danny Kruger is recorded in secret, and the man who has the Tories terrified. See you in a minute.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
Do you mind if I ask you a little bit about Sebastian? It really amazes me how a mother who can lose a child in such a shocking and unexpected way, so little, so precious, can then turn that grief into something so positive. How did you find the strength to get up, get a camera crew, as you say, travel to the other side of the world and investigate all of this?
I was angry at Sebastian for dying. You know, you feel like saying, God, 32 years later, and I can still get very, very upset about it. I was angry that something that while he was born and lived with me and slept and then died, they were actively campaigning in New Zealand to try and stop this happening because they had a very high cot death rate there. They had the lady, the Anne Diamond, if you like, of New Zealand, a television presenter called Judy Bailey, went on telly every night and said, if you're just about to put your baby down to sleep, put him on his or her back, not the tummy, and this will help. And their cot death rate plummeted. And I went out to New Zealand and met her, and it was anger that drove me to come back and demand that we have the same advert here, the same campaign. And of course, I got all this complete nonsense from the Department of Health saying, you know, oh, young mothers do not watch television, I was told. In other words, while New Zealand mums were being told how to save their babies' lives, we actively denied British mums that advice during the time that Sebastian and others were dying.
And the other point, I suppose, to make is it's helpful to educate all generations, because when I had my babies, my mum would say, oh, he's not settling, just stick him on his tummy, he'll be much happier. That's what we did with you. And we had to say, well, things have changed, and, you know, but it's about educating everybody, because it's not just the mums that get their hands on the babies.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Headliners. I'm Nick Dixon, still here with Cressida Wetton and the enigma that is Lewis Schaefer. There he is, looking eye-rolling at me, even though he knows it's true. Let's do the Times. And Keir Starmer is warning us he'll have no money to invest in public services. So I was supposed to vote for him purely on charisma alone, Cressida.
Nice. Keir Starmer tells councils there is no magic money tree. So this is a kind of expectation management piece from Keir Starmer saying, hey, just because Labour's getting in doesn't mean we're going to spend any money. And, of course, lots of councils are on the verge of bankruptcy. And the councils have rejected this and said, no, that's not credible. How could it not be credible that there's no money? I think that's very credible. We've had COVID and all the rest of it. So, they're sort of, the councils are saying, no, they'll have to find the money somewhere. And, of course, Starmer is talking about the Tories. He's saying they've left him a poisoned chalice. There's no money left. And this is this sort of fashionable thing now, isn't it? The left are saying, They're saying conservative things. You know,
Well, because they know they're going to win. And when you know you're going to win, you go after the voters who might vote for you, as opposed to the Tories, who are going after their core voters because their core voters may not even vote for them.
Ah, good point.
Yeah, that's what
Never thought I'd say. It's a good point. Yeah, he's targeting because he's stolen a Tory policy. He's talking about levelling up, which in a way is hilarious. He's completely out of ideas. Never mind the council's being bankrupt. He's bankrupt in terms of ideas. But is it smart? Because actually levelling up was part of the popular 2019 Boris agenda that the Tories largely abandoned.
Right. Yeah.
So maybe it is smart to talk about.
It is really smart because he's got all the Labour voters. The Labour voters are going to vote for him. Who are they going to vote for? Rishi Sunak? They're not going to vote for Rishi Sunak. So he might as well just forget about them. He should. If I were a Labour person, I'd say, listen, just let the guy talk for now, and then we can get mad at him later because he's going to win. He doesn't need our vote. We're going to vote for him. But maybe he could win a couple of dozen extra seats and basically destroy the Tories.
Is he also, with the magic money tree, further distancing himself from Corbyn? Because that was a big phrase that they attacked Corbyn with. Yeah. There's no magic money tree. And now Starmer's saying there's no magic money tree. It's like he's already buried Corbyn, but...
Right. And he doesn't have the problem. The Tories have got to worry about reform being a bit further right than them, and he hasn't got to worry about somebody... He doesn't have a reform equivalent to worry about, does he?
True, unless you say George Galloway, but that's just one seat and one guy in the House.
And they're going to vote. They're going to vote for Keir Starmer. And even if they don't vote for him...
He's going to win.
He's going to win.
Yeah, I love that he's invented this new thing. He says, people say to me, the worst you can do in politics is prey on people's fears. Yeah, in some ways, preying on their hopes is just as bad. I love that. It's like, no hope, abandon all hope. I wouldn't want to prey on your hopes. What a weird new invented phrase.
That is really weird. I didn't know why that was weird, but you're right for pointing that out, because it is just, it's like, but it's part of the British philosophy is give up hope. That's what Britain is
all
about.
All ye who enter here. I know there's something so oblique about it. I wouldn't want to prey on your hopes, so I won't be offering any hope for the next election. Wow,
do you remember when I have a joke about don't ask how British, not a joke, but how British people are always telling their kids, don't ask, I want doesn't get, I want doesn't get, don't ask, and I want doesn't get. It's like telling, he's telling British people, you're not going to get what you want, so just shut up about it.
Yeah,
right.
I want doesn't get this Keir Starmer story. Let's do the Times, and 3/4 of Scots support assisted dying. Now, to me, when you're copying Canada in almost anything except dealing with heavy snow, you might want to reconsider. But maybe I'm wrong. What do you think, Lewis?
I think they're... I don't think they're imitating Canada. I think it's part of the Team World philosophy. It's a death cult. Kill as many people as possible. Hopefully, the older people. Kill the people who want to die, so that rich people and people in power can have a free run from their home to the airport. They don't want anybody on the highway that's unnecessary. It's absolutely sickening. And this is brought up by the Lib Dems. Right, I think the Lib Dems is the guy who sponsored this thing. And for what I know about the Lib Dems, aren't they dead already?
Although Starmer has also said he would legalise assisted dying. Cressa, I have a lot of views on this, but you're the guest.
Yeah, it's on its way, isn't it? It's coming. I mean, it's just, to me, it's like all social reform. At the time, it always looks... There's some kind of kindness, it appeals, and they put these people forward, like the poster child, obviously, is Esther Rantzen, and we all, remember her from Hearts of Gold, and, she's this sort of loved figure. And obviously it's going to be incredibly sad if she goes through this illness naturally. But that's how social reforms start, and then there's unintended consequences decades down the line, and I can't see this going in a good direction.
Let me give you a few facts, because I just researched this for a show I was doing in terms of Canada. So Canada killed 13,500 people in 2022. That's almost 4%. That's over 4% of the deaths that year. That was from euthanasia. One example, a 41-year-old woman with fibromyalgia confessed in private it wasn't even a fibromyalgia, it was just that she was poor. They killed her because she was poor, essentially, because she didn't tell them that. An autistic young man who was being bullied, they euthanized him because he was sad because he was bullied. This is called the slippery slope. There's an ethical argument for it. I understand people are in a lot of pain and it's horrific, but there's an ethical argument, the sanctity of life, the Christian argument. Liberal atheists make an argument. There's a guy called Kevin Yull who's written a book on it against it. But then there's also the slippery slope argument. Canada, they're offering people for being poor and autistic. This is where it leads.
Very bad. But there is no ethical argument for this. People who want to die automatically. They just die when you don't want to live anymore.
I'm a doctor.
You don't need, no, I am a doctor. I don't know what you said, but if you're in so much pain, you don't need someone to take your life. You just stop breathing.
I'm not sure that's true.
That is so true.
OK, that's your opinion.
It feels like a position of privilege, to
Yeah, everyone sympathises for the people in massive pain. The problem is the slippery slope. There's also the argument, Christians would say it's wrong anyway. Some humanists would say that. And last thing I just want to say on it as well, they bringing out these statistics, 3/4 support it, but they're not going to bring out those statistics for policies they don't like the death penalty is supported by a majority of people in this country for child murder, serial murder. As I've said before, multiple murder. That's not going to come back. So we can't just go off populism alone. So anyway, I don't know. I'm pro-death penalty, but against euthanasia.
I'm pushing back on your death penalty. I'm still not sure about that. All of this interfering with life, it's like, I don't know if that's for me.
You know what's interesting about Starmer? He's very pro-euthanasia, but he's been around the world campaigning against the death penalty, and his work has led to brutal murders in places like Uganda, getting off scot-free. So he seems to me, that's a strange priorities. But anyway, it's a massive topic. I've got too much to say about it. Let's do the Telegraph. And some leaked recordings from MP Danny Kruger reveal that he's quite insightful, Cressida.
Reform is right about Tory failings, admits MP Danny Kruger in leaked recordings. I think he's going to be a member of the Reform Party within the week. That's my prediction. He's basically... So he's come out and acknowledged, he told party members that the Tories were not a very conservative party in lots of ways, and he's just acknowledging, what we know, that the Conservatives aren't very conservative and that, obviously, reform are a massive threat to them. He hasn't really said anything that outrageous.
But you actually think that this is a real situation where somebody just caught him and did the thing. Every one of these politicians, especially someone like this guy, he knows when to keep his mouth shut. He knows people are going to listen to this. He's basically sucking up to his own base. He's saying, I am more reform than those reform people, but we can't vote reform. We have to stick to our guns and vote Tory. And this is just I don't know what the point of this article is.
So you've gone with a conspiracy angle that he wanted this to be released, which we can't confirm. But one thing he did say, he's basically saying, stick with the Tories. We need to reform the Tories. Bad choice of words, not go with reform, who he calls a destructive force. He says, I don't think they stand for genuine and conservative ideas. Even if he's admitting the critique is correct. He says what their critique of the Conservatives is correct, but at the same time, I don't agree with their approach. It's a little bit...
Well, that's it. He's on the fence.
Yeah.
I think this leaves him lots of options in the future.
I do like Danny Kruger. He's one of the NatCon side of the Tories. Go on.
He's not on the fence. He's saying, I might like the reform, but you got to vote for me. I don't care about the other people.
I'm just saying this could lead to more discussions, couldn't it? It could lead to, come on our chat show and talk about your views. You sound so right, or whatever. And then...
Yeah, and then if he switches party, it could... Okay,
a few weeks of, are you going to change, Danny? No, not at all.
Yeah.
It's possible.
Yeah, he says our brand is tarnished, but no one can argue with that part. But I'm not sure Reform are that much different to the Tories anymore, following their recent dumping of several candidates at the slightest ill wind. But anyway, that's me. We've got another similar one coming up in the Eye, and some Tories are urging Sunak to make our friend Nige a US ambassador. But will he go for it, Lewis?
Yeah, this is Make Farage US ambassador. Terrified Tories urge Sunak to buy off reform figurehead by making him the head, by sending him to America for the last 2 months of the whatchamacallit regime, basically killing the reform. I don't know what the point of this story is. Is this story to make the Tories look bad? Is that they're so weak they've got to ask Nigel Farage to do it, or is it to play on the Tory masses, to say the Tory masses support this guy, or to diffuse reform? I don't know what this story is.
Well, it could be any of those. I mean, I just don't understand why. It's like Nick offering me your phone number. I've already got it. I don't understand why. Why would Trump? Why would Farage want?
Don't tell my girlfriend that.
Well, he probably wouldn't, because he did say to the Spectator recently, Farage, that he would like to take this job with Starmer. If Starmer would give it him, he goes, but he wouldn't do it. But if he would, he'd like to go and be the envoy to America. And as Rees-Mogg says here, but it involves the Tories winning and Trump winning this scenario, because why get the job from Rishi just before you're going to lose the election? Unless it would be their special assurances that it would carry over somehow, which I can't understand how that would work.
It's a poison chalice.
Yeah. So other people are suggesting give him a period, which I think would be more tempting. Though I'm not sure he'd even go for that.
And he wouldn't he says he wouldn't take it. So why is this a news story?
We've got to fill the show with something, Lewis. It can't all be about meat and your ties. That can be about 80, 90%.
Why is it like 5 pages in the Eye?
The Eye's got to print something. I mean, no one knows why the Eye exists, really, if we're going to get right down to it.
Well, it's also a chance for them to go over old grudges, isn't it, about Boris not calling, the Tories not calling Farage when they stepped back.
Yeah, Boris didn't thank him.
So it's sort of airing all their old...
Why didn't Boris thank him? I mean, they're saying, reformers saying it's mad that you think that was the reason. But that would be really annoying. You step down all your candidates to help him. And it is a very Boris thing. I'm not saying he did it, but it would be a very Boris thing to not even bother calling him.
We don't know that.
We don't know that, but if he did, it would seem like it. Can I get away with that?
I think that's fair.
Other opinions are available, satirical content, Ofcom, whatever. Let's do The Guardian now to end this section on some upbeat news. Islamic State are back, Cressida.
Advance of Islamic State affiliates could lay ground for new wave of terrorism. Yeah, very uplifting. So, obviously, recently we've had the attack in Moscow, which ISIS are taking responsibility for. So the whole of Europe's kind of on red alert now. Everyone's worried. But this article is sort of saying this isn't a new thing. They've been planning this for years. Right. Are you planning a terrorist attack on my
And you have watched... No.
section?
I'm just getting my little...
Yeah, we know what you're up to.
I feel bad for Cressida. You're going to look mental because you started laughing during a thing about ISIS because he started getting out all his mugs and boxes.
This is what this whole job is like. When I'm actually able to speak without... Anyway... ISIS are up to no good, very much like yourself, but on a grander scale with a much better budget. And so when they had their caliphate, they were getting resources from all the places, from Raqqa and wherever they were, but all of that's come to an end. So they're now getting interested in the sort of splinter groups.
Yeah, and they're in Africa and South Asia. I agree with you. Lewis is the Islamic State of this show. Anything to add, Lewis?
You're making... You know, this is also one of those... You know, that ISIS is going around finding new places to do terrorism. What, you don't think? It's ISIS. It's not even ISIS.
No, there has been a shift.
They are all that way. The amount of people who believe in killing Jews, and this is what they said that they want to do. They want to kill the Jews. IS offered advice on practical steps to fight the Jews, called for attacks on Jews everywhere.
But that's different. They're doing that now to these smaller groups, their affiliates, so they wouldn't have bothered with that before.
I disagree with you. They all have the same. They're one of two groups. Well, of course they have their differences. Probably you're
This
right.
article is about the differences.
Okay. Sorry.
We've got to go to a break. You can work it out in the break. That is it for part 2. But coming up, why you can't call a woman glamorous, why teachers are being hit by pupils, and Donald Trump's big, beautiful new streaming service. See you soon.
Hello, very good evening to you. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update brought to you by the Met Office. There will still be some showers around this weekend, but generally through the Easter period, it is going to be a bit drier and a bit warmer than it has been of late. Low pressure still in control like it has been through much of this week, but the flow around the low is going to ease a little bit, so we will see our winds easing. That being said, through the end of today, still quite blustery for many of us, some heavy showery rain affecting northern areas, something a little bit drier and clearer across central parts and also Northern Ireland. Here, under the clear skies, could see a touch of frost and perhaps even a few pockets of mist and fog. Elsewhere, where we stick with the cloud and the showery rain, it is going to be a milder start to Good Friday. Otherwise, and as we go through Good Friday itself, yes, a bit of brightness and some dry weather around at first, but still outbreaks of showery rain and a greater chance of catching some showers as we go into the afternoon. Potential for some showers turning heavy, possibly even thundery with some hail. But there should be some bright sunny spells in between the showers, and temperatures higher than recently, highs of around 14 Celsius towards the southeast. The winds will be easing and easing further as we go into Saturday, which does look like it will be a calmer and drier day than of late for many. Still some showers around, but they don't look quite as intense as we've seen recently, though potential for some heavy rain to affect parts of Cornwall later on in the day. Easter Day itself on Sunday looks mostly dry. There are a few showers still, but turning cooler again by Monday. See you later.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall?
Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's live here on GB News.
Whenever Parliament is in session on a Wednesday at midday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions. We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio and online.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Headliners. Let's get straight into it with the Daily Mail. And a tribunal has ruled that calling women glamorous can undermine them at work, which is why I never give women compliments or talk to them, Lewis.
But you can call me glamorous.
Yes, you are. Look at that tie.
Yeah, the great tie. This is I wear a new tie every day. But you know what I've discovered?
You could
read the headline.
Discovered that Marks and Spencer's has made in the 1990s made every tie ever made. Marks and Spencer.
Really?
Yeah, every tie.
Because it looks more expensive, but it's...
Does it look like an old tie?
Anyway, should we read the headline? Because they'll tell me...
Calling a woman glamorous at work risks undermining or belittling them, tribunal rules. As beauty queen lawyer loses claim that her female boss racially discriminated her. Basically, she lost the case. I don't know where they said she lost the case. This woman, who was a lawyer in Waltham Forest, her boss called her glamorous, and she sued her boss for racism.
Yeah, which they didn't accept, though they did accept that it was, it might make a, what did they say?
They said a new person started at the company and the boss, rather than saying, this is Jo, I don't know what her name was, she said, oh, this is the glamour corner, which I can understand might be a bit inappropriate, although we don't have any context. However, what I can't understand, and neither could the judges, is how that is a racist comment. And that's why they said, well, look, maybe stay off the glamour stuff, but
was she awarded any money?
No, she wasn't.
We found the one thing that isn't racist, which is the great news.
But
this was a woman. It wasn't even a man, was it? It was a woman showing... And she's a woman, so it wasn't like misogyny.
Look, there's so much context missing here. If you knew them and what they're like and what their personalities are, it does turn out that the woman who was complaining was sacked in 2020 due to too many agency staff and long-standing issues with her performance, such as client complaints.
Right.
So... I feel like there's a lot of missing information here.
She was a rubbish worker.
She didn't win her case, but everybody knows, wink, wink, nod, nod, when you call somebody glamorous, you know what race you're talking about.
But I would have totally disagree.
Right. It's absurd. It's absurd.
Would you listen to my jokes, Chris?
You tricked me.
It isn't that, but the truth is, here's a point that the ladies aren't going to like when I say it, is that women can't take a compliment.
You know, I've got a worse point. Doesn't this just prove, Chris, that the big problem is women in the workplace? I mean, let's be honest.
You know what? That's where I was. That was my second point.
Oh, right,
that was my second point.
Just two men
it's only the second
bullying a woman.
Women shouldn't work.
Well,
they just can't handle it.
To answer that honestly, I think the social experiment that put women and men working together in the same jobs began only a few decades ago, and let's just say we're still working it out.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's not women in the workplace, because women have worked...
It's the same workplace.
In the 1950s, they
it's in our spaces.
for a bit.
It's in our spaces.
They stopped in the 1950s briefly, or something like that. But go back for most of human history, women have worked, but in different areas.
In different jobs.
Yeah.
They've shucked cashews.
Yeah.
They've done stuff like that.
Really? I think you're thinking of the third world.
Whatever it is, that's what they've done.
Do you know what? It's controversial what you're saying, and not what I'm saying, of course.
Well, not if I got to say it in the detail, I won't get to say it in. I don't think
you get shouted down by men in the workplace. But what you're saying is actually just the same as Jordan Peterson. He's been in trouble with this. He's saying we don't know the rules yet of women in the workplace. Should you be allowed to wear makeup and all this kind of thing? There's going to be conflicts, men and women. But what's absurd about this story is it's actually two women. It's a woman saying, "Oh, she's glamorous."
Yeah.
But you don't know what else. You don't know what's between them, do you? You don't know. There's
years of animosity.
Yeah.
Is that women will take a compliment from somebody that they like. If, there's that old saying, if Leonardo DiCaprio comes in.
And somebody they're terrified of.
We've got to move on. Yeah. Me and Lewis would happily take any compliment at this point, I would say. Men like compliments, we never get them. Let's do the Telegraph. And 1 in 5 teachers have been hit by a pupil. Of course, in a healthy society, it would be the other way around, Christina.
You'd love that. Nearly 1 in 5 teachers in England hit by a pupil this school year. What I wouldn't want to be a teacher. There's never any good news about teaching, is there? And there's even a primary school teacher here saying that she's seen nursery and reception pupils spitting and swearing as behaviour has deteriorated during her career. Wow. So it's all very sad, just lots of bad behaviour. It made me think of Mizzy, you know, our poster boy for
he follows
social.
me on Twitter.
Does he?
Yeah.
Great. Don't give him any more ideas. Anyway, they've got some solutions. The Department for Education says it's taking decisive action on the issue and investing £10 million in behaviour hubs to support schools. And that's great, but there's no mention of fatherlessness in here, and I do think that's important, like family breakdown, lack of discipline, etc., etc.
Well, I think that's all true, interesting and everything, but it's like a poll. It's a poll of 9,000 teachers. You know, they're teachers. Of course they're going to say it's a horrible working condition. They hit me. Who knows if they were hit? Were they hit or were they hit or were they... I mean, well, look, it's a horror.
Hang on, you're like saying they were only slapped, they weren't properly punched, and you're saying that they shouldn't be crybabies.
We don't know. We don't know how it compares with years past, and we don't know, and we don't... I mean, it probably is bad. I know for a fact, because I have a close personal friend who is a teacher at a school for bad kids. And it's bad. It's really bad at this particular school.
It's in the name, and it's school for bad kids.
It's a school for bad kids. And these kids, they hit their teacher, and then they go to school for bad kids, and then they hit somebody, the teacher again, and they go to prison. But we hope. But
that isn't a lack of punishment a big reason why this happens now? There's no punishment.
Yeah, there's no punishment. There should be the death penalty. Kill, kill, kill.
No, it doesn't have to go that
Maybe
far.
not for children.
Yeah.
You're actually even more hardline than me, Lewis. I would bring in a death penalty for murder, but not for, like, children.
You know what? At some point, they're bad kids. At some point, I don't know what it is.
I've got to push back on this. There are people writing about this who know what they're talking about. And one of the major things...
How do you know?
Because I read. And Warren Farrell's book, The Boy Crisis, which I cannot recommend enough, talks about this. And if you have a family that has no male influence, the best thing you can do is get some. So they go to cadets once a week, or they join a rugby club or whatever. And all this, like, oh, strong women can do everything. Well, they can, but it would be better if they outsourced a bit of discipline.
You know
Women aren't great at discipline.
I'm going to tell you something. If the parent sends their kid to cadet club, that's not a cure, because the kid doesn't want to go. Maybe the kid doesn't want to go. Maybe the mother doesn't want to send the kid to. It's the kids at a certain age. You just write the whole thing off. I don't know what that age is. Could be 3 years old.
We've got to move on, but that's one of my favourite comebacks ever. It's because I read from Cressida. That is brilliant.
And nobody complains about her. They say, "Oh, she's so sweet."
No, I thought it was brilliant. You deserve it.
That was so nasty.
Let's do the Express.
Absolutely.
And Donald Trump, speaking of nasty, he calls people nasty. And Donald Trump has announced plans for a new streaming service. Many people are saying it will be the most tremendous streaming service they've ever seen, Lewis.
Tremendous.
Many people.
Many. Well, here's the thing about this story, which is like, I don't understand it myself. Donald Trump's media company announces plans for a non-woke streaming service, which is fine. But the article is making it seem, because Donald Trump just took his company public and is now worth $8 billion, this company, but it's got absolutely no sales, and it's got losses, a lot of losses, not as much as we have here, but a lot of losses. But the truth is, it's doing great. What they're trying to do is, after you take a company public, there's always a dip after the initial buy, and they want to make sure that there's still a little bit of momentum, so they make an announcement. They say, this is our great big plan to get more people to come in or prevent the dip. This is a non-story. Donald Trump, of course, he better do a non-woke thing. He's not going to...
Well, not necessarily. I wouldn't think of Donald Trump as an arts person. I didn't know he had a burning desire to create drama and literature.
Yeah, he doesn't have a burning desire, but he's got to put something on his service.
Conservatives aren't supposed to be good at art, but at the same time, we don't feel like the art that we've got is authentic enough.
Yeah, it's a myth, actually, that conservatives aren't good at art. But, yeah, I know that's the conventional wisdom.
You think?
Yeah, there have been people throughout history, although they are sometimes quite far-right figures, as Ezra Pound and people like that. It is a bit of a myth. The idea is that liberal people are higher in openness, as Jordan Peterson would say, but that is a questionable... It's a questioned category. Some people think it's just a measure of liberalness, basically. There's a bigger topic. But, I don't know, would you watch... I mean, Trump's going to come in with some sort of liberal, centrist, anti-woke thing, isn't he? He's going to have a streaming service. Truth Social's got this really high valuation, though people are calling it a meme stock, so I don't know. I don't know. Do you think would you watch this Trump service?
I want to see it. I want to know what it is, yeah.
Yeah, we definitely
No, well, it depends what's on it, you know?
Okay.
I mean, he's got other competition. I just don't like the name. It's called TMTG.
Yeah, that's terrible. It needs to change.
Plus. Anything which has a plus. I used to work for a magazine called Footwear Plus.
You're right. It's a bad name. To be honest, Truth Social was a terrible name, but it doesn't seem to have harmed him. Let's do the Times. And would you touch Bill Gates's meat, Cressida? As in, would you even eat this
HR
terrible synthetic meat?
Inside America's billion-dollar culture war over lab-grown meat. I think this is a really interesting story. This is about one of these. This idea of lab-grown meat, it means they've taken some cells from a dead or dying animal, put it in a petri dish, done all the right things, and so they're making meat without mass farming.
Right.
Which, to me, as a softie, I don't really eat. Well, I don't eat meat. I love this.
You don't eat meat?
No.
Well, not this.
I've started eating fish again. Yeah. Well, but as a kid, I was vegetarian as a child. Anyway, the point is, this gets around all the animal suffering stuff, which is brilliant, but there's a backlash. People don't like it. It's a bit like when they started making almond milk, and obviously the farming community isn't going to go for this.
No.
Yeah. I think Lewis is going to love this, though.
Well,
sorry.
There's just a lot of it. There's a lot of points to. What are your thoughts?
My thoughts are, number one, it's like. It's all imaginary because they say they were selling this stuff for £45 an ounce. That's $400 a steak. It's almost impossible to scale up this stuff. Is that in order for you to make this quote unquote meat, the amount of energy that's needed, the amount of plant protein that you've got to add into this thing. It's like feeding an animal, but then you got to heat it up in metal vats. It's completely untenable. It's a lie. No one will eat this
I
stuff.
can't tell if you're just being Lewis Schaefer or whether you've done some research.
I have done research. I saw a YouTube thumbnail.
OK, well, do you know what? I didn't have time to read this in my usual depth, so I'm going to do something terrible. I'm going to take Lewis's word for it. But that is it for part 3. But coming up in the final section, the porn star who's in favour of divorce, the fisherman who survived on tree bark, and the man who hasn't slept for 60 years. Ironically, worth staying awake for. See you in a minute.
Dubes & Co. Weekdays from 6 p.m.
This story caught my eye. Lloyds Bank, right, they own the insurance company Scottish Widows. They have now issued some kind of suggested guidance about which word to try and avoid upsetting people or perhaps be as inclusive as possibly can be. One of these words is widows, which really caught my eye because of the amount of stupidity. If you own a brand literally called Scottish Widows, you can't then be saying that the word widows is triggering and offensive. Anyway, because it is so ludicrous, I need to move over from that part because I want to talk about the broader issue. So many organisations, they have what they call ESG. I'm going to bring a graphic up on the screen in case you're not familiar with what this is. But it's a sense of kind of government, and I would say it's almost like a spine. It underpins so much of what business does today. It stands for environmental, social and governance. And it's around things like how does a business perform when it comes to their environmental impact? How diverse are their employees? How diverse is their board? And so on and so forth. Do you think ESG is a force for good and much needed within business or not, Ben?
It is the introduction of systemic institutionalised prejudice in the United Kingdom, which is going to damage dreadfully our economy, but also our culture, our cohesion as a society, and it's undermining, again, coming back to it, the nation-state that is the United Kingdom. ESG has to be ditched.
Strong words. Judita, do you agree with him?
I don't agree because I think that with ESG, when you have them, what you're having an increase in is specialists in ESG being introduced into companies to kind of imbricate it into how the company functions. If you're moving in a direction of making your company's functionality be optimized in a way that is inclusive of anyone from any background who has the qualifications to occupy that position, that is a good thing.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to the final section of Headliners. Let's get straight into it with the Metro. And a pub has lost an award just because they had a bit of Nazi memorabilia on the wall. Sounds like political correctness gone mad, Lewis.
It could be, kind of. Anyway, pub loses prestigious title because of highly offensive displays on its wall, according to the Metro. And the prestigious title is the best brand, the best pub in Cornwall. By cameras, they voted for it. So I don't know how prestigious it is. It's Cornwall.
It's got lots of cool stuff in it. It's got lots of curious objects.
Yeah, it's called the Hole in the Wall Pub in Bodmin, and they have some kind of Nazi headband, arm patch.
Armband, yeah. But you know what was terrible is actually, even though I'm joking in the intro, it actually wasn't that bad. It was brought home as a celebration of beating the Nazis. Yeah. So it's the death of context. You've heard of the death of love. Yeah. It's the death of context.
He didn't put it in the pub.
Right,
Pubs
it was already
have
there.
things in for decades, and he becomes the landlord of a pub that's already got this piece of history stored in it. And rather than put a plaque on it, why can't we put a plaque on things?
Yeah.
We have to tear it down in a panic.
Well, you know what? I agree with you, and that's why they should close the Imperial War Museum.
OK, interesting take. And you know what they were
because
doing?
it's got Nazi stuff in it.
Oh, yeah, you're saying you extended the logic.
This is an opportunity to mark some history, and they just want to get rid of it.
Right, and the other annoying thing is, it was as a result of one complaint. We need to stop overreacting to some idiot complaining. You know, someone writes a hit piece, someone complains about nothing, everyone overreacts to stuff all the time. Just ignore these idiots. Anyway, let's do the star. And former porn star Mia Khalifa has said divorce is hot. I, for one, am shocked she's not an advocate for family values, Cressida.
Well, Mia Khalifa declares divorce is hot and says women should wear rings after split. This is so depressing. It makes you long for a blood diamond, would be less depressing. It is just horrible. It kind of changes. It starts out as just this really cynical thing where she's saying she's been involved in a piece for a Vogue business called Jewellery's Next Big Opportunity, Divorce. I mean, how cynical is that? So they're hoping to sell more stuff to people when they get divorced so they can wear these rings that show they're divorced. I don't know why you'd want to do that. And then as it goes on, she kind of changes her direction and starts talking about decluttering. You know, I'm one of those people who just can't get rid of anything, as if it's like, oh, I've got this engagement ring lying around and I need to do something with it. Very cynical.
Yeah. If you hated it, then you should have put a ring on it. Lewis.
Yeah, well, she's one of these people. She's was a porn star, right? And she was quite a big porn star, quite a beautiful girl. And she's become a supporter of Hamas. She was a supporter of Hamas.
Oh, yeah. Famously, she was a bit dodgy on October 7th.
And so, you know what the question is? I'm not going to ask you guys, but the question is out there. I wonder how Hamas would treat a nice girl like this.
Good question. Interesting question. Let's do the Sun before we get in any more trouble. And a missing fisherman survived for weeks, on just fish and tree bark, or as we call it, the Lewis Schaefer diet, Lewis.
Well, I was thinking about this when I saw it. Incredible moment. Missing fisherman is found after 6 months lost in 39 degrees Celsius, whatever, Arctic tundra, where he survived on tree bark. This is a story about a guy who goes away for 6 months, finds a cabin to stay in. He's got all the wood he needs in the forest, and he's been feasting on fish, according to the article. And he was away for 6 months. And what men will do to stay away from his wife.
Oh. I love that. He's got all the wood he needs in the forest.
Yeah.
He hasn't. He was almost dead when they found him.
Well, the truth is, he was in this hut, a hunter's shack. On in a stove, and he was eating fish. And the picture that they showed of him is him on the ice in a tent. How did he get into the tent?
Conspiracy.
Yes.
A few things here. One, this was in Russia, right? So that his wife only got worried when he didn't return home for Christmas. He was gone for months in the Arctic tundra. Yeah. Oh, a bit worried when he didn't return for 2 years. And then, can you even eat tree bark? So many questions.
Well, we know that you can now. I mean, it just sounds like a fantastic health retreat, doesn't it? We're all worried about our weight. Let's go.
Yeah, well, tree bark is an interesting reference. It's a subtle reference to the people of Russia, because during the war, I read this myself and probably took place in Russia, there was such starvation that the Nazis, the Germans, were eating tree bark after the war. And probably every Russian knows this. So it's sort of a reminder of what's going on now.
OK, minus 39 is cold. I have a friend who lives in Finland. He tells me at minus 30, your penis starts to freeze. Let's do one more story. The Star, and if there's one diet I want to follow, it's that of a man who hasn't slept in 60 years, Cressida.
A man who hasn't slept in over 60 years survives on rice wine and cigarettes. I mean, is this possible? Since 1962, South Vietnamese farmer Thai Ngoc claims he's been unable to sleep, and he's just smoked 70 fags a day. I mean, that's a lot, isn't it? And he reckons he just brews his own rice wine and knocks back a few shots of that. If he drinks enough, he says he can get an hour's sleep.
Yeah.
But this is very freaky, isn't it?
Well, it reminds me of this girl that I'm presently associated with, and she is always saying, I didn't sleep at all last night. And she's the most amazing sleeper. We have no idea whether this is a true story. Just because he says, I never got any sleep. Has it been tested? No, it's not been tested.
Well, he's got a wife who agrees that this is happening.
Yeah, because that's what she wants to believe it. It's the same guy who goes out for 6 months in the Arctic as this. He goes out working every night. We don't know what he's doing every night. We don't know. Well, he says he's working in the fields.
He says he's working in the fields, and then he puts in this comment about, it's strange that I'm not more prosperous. Yeah, maybe he's up to no good.
He owns 3 houses in Vietnam. You got to read the story.
We've heard about this guy before. He gets a story every few months or something, this guy, doesn't he?
Oh, I don't know.
Just because he hasn't slept in 60 years.
Yeah.
Neither have I.
And you know what? You know what he's going to say? He's going to say, I don't need it all. He's a breatharian.
OK, well, we've got to end on that. We didn't get onto the NHS one. Never mind. The show is nearly over, so let's take another quick look at Friday's front pages. So the Telegraph has PM under fire after honour for top donor. We discussed it earlier. The Guardian, famine is setting in. UN court orders Israel to unblock Gaza aid. The Express, disgrace. Fat cat water boss is under fire. The Times has clean your own mess, Thames Water told. The Eye has taxpayers may be forced to bail out Thames Water as customers face 40% hike in bills. And finally, the Daily Star, the full Nelson, which was about the storm Nelson. Those were your front pages. That is it for tonight's show. Thanks to Cressida and to a lesser extent, Lewis. Headliners is back tomorrow at 11 p.m. Just kidding. If you're watching at 5 a.m, then stay tuned for breakfast. But for now, it's good night, good morning, and God bless.
Bye, my...
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, very good evening to you. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update brought to you by the Met Office. There will still be some showers around this weekend, but generally through the Easter period, it is going to be a bit drier and a bit warmer than it has been of late. Low pressure still in control like it has been through much of this week, but the flow around the low is going to ease a little bit, so we will see our winds easing. That being said, through the end of today, still quite blustery for many of us. Some heavy showery rain affecting northern areas, something a little bit drier and clearer across central parts and also Northern Ireland. Here, under the clear skies, could see a touch of frost and perhaps even a few pockets of mist and fog. Elsewhere, where we stick with the cloud and the showery rain, it is going to be a milder start to Good Friday. Otherwise, and as we go through Good Friday itself, yes, a bit of brightness and some dry weather around at first, but still outbreaks of showery rain and a greater chance of catching some showers as we go into the afternoon. Potential for some showers turning heavy, possibly even thundery with some hail. But there should be some bright sunny spells in between the showers, and temperatures higher than recently, highs of around 14 Celsius towards the southeast. The winds will be easing and easing further as we go into Saturday, which does look like it will be a calmer and drier day than of late for many. Still some showers around, but they don't look quite as intense as we've seen recently, though potential for some heavy rain to affect parts of Cornwall later on in the day. Easter Day itself on Sunday looks mostly dry. There are a few showers still, but turning cooler again by Monday. See you later.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Want to be a winner just like Phil?
Obviously, whoever wins it next is going to be as happy as I was, and they're going to get even more money this time round, so why wouldn't you go in the draw?
Enter our massive spring giveaway. There's £12,345 in tax-free cash to give your finances a spring boost. We'll also send you on a shopping spree with £500 worth of vouchers to spend in the store of your choice. You'll also get a garden gadget package. You have to hurry, as lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday. For another chance to win the vouchers, the treats, and £12,345 in tax-free cash, cash? Text GBWin to 84902. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB03 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if watching or listening on demand. Good luck.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall?
Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria DiPiero, bringing you
PMQ's live here on GB News.
Whenever Parliament is in session on a Wednesday at midday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions. We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And why it matters to you. From your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you. Good afternoon, Britain. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Martin Daubney. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good evening. Well, it's stabbings, it's violence, and I'm wondering, are you now getting scared to go out on the train, on the underground, and what can be done? We have a townhouse exclusive. Tired of putting cross-channel migrants in hotels, they're now going for brand new 3-bedroom townhouses. And joining me on Talking Pints, Nicholas Danes has been in Batman, Harry Potter, Star Wars, Mission Impossible. I've got to tell you, I've never actually met ever a real-life stuntman in my life. I'm looking forward to that segment. That's on Talking Pints. But before all of that, let's get the news with Polly Middlehurst.
Nigel, thank you, and good evening to you. Well, the top story from the GB Newsroom tonight is from London, where police have arrested a man in his 30s in connection with a double stabbing at Kennington Tube Station. And that comes after another man was also arrested on suspicion of attempted murder after a separate stabbing on a London train. Footage of that incident shared on social media showed a masked man attacking someone with a large knife as passengers called for help in the background. Meanwhile, British Transport Police announced this afternoon that they're going to be enhancing patrols over the Easter weekend across a number of London stations following the unconnected stabbings on the rail network. Michael Gove has described the management of Thames Water as a disgrace after calls to increase customers' bills to plug a major funding gap were made public. The firm's bosses have admitted it could face the risk of emergency nationalisation as its cash crisis deepens. Shareholders have refused to give the company £500 million of extra funding, describing the rescue plan put in front of them as uninvestable. Instead, they want the regulator, Ofwat, to increase customers' bills by up to 40% over the next 5 years. The United Nations called on Rishi Sunak today to scrap his Rwanda plan. The organisation's Human Rights Committee says the government's plan to send asylum seekers on a one-way trip to the East African nation should be abandoned or repealed if it passes in Parliament. In their report, 18 member states raised concerns of discrimination and potential violations of international law. The government responded, however, accusing the United Nations of double standards because it already sends refugees to Rwanda. Over 600 Border Force officers at Heathrow Airport are set to go on strike for 4 days, beginning on the 11th of April. In a recent vote, 90% of union members at the UK's busiest airport backed the walkout over a shift pattern change. The PCS union suggesting those changes may see as many as 250 staff forced out of their jobs. They're demanding those plans be withdrawn, calling it unprofessional and even inhumane treatment of staff that they say are critical to national security. Well, 4 Conservative MPs and a major Conservative donor have been awarded honours after the Prime Minister recommended them to His Majesty the King. First of all, Mohammed Mansour has been knighted for his contributions to business, charity and politics. And Philip Davis, husband of the government's Common Sense Minister Esther McVey, has also been knighted alongside the Farming Minister Mark Spencer. Meanwhile, Treasury Committee Chairwoman Harriet Baldwin, in the picture there, has been given a damehood, as has Tracy Crouch, the former Sports Minister. And the British filmmaker Christopher Nolan and his wife, producer Emma Thomas, are to respectively receive a knighthood and a damehood. Their film Oppenheimer took home the Best Oscar for Best Picture at this year's Academy Awards. Together, they've created some of Hollywood's most celebrated cinema, including Dunkirk, Inception and a trilogy of Batman films starring Christian Bale. Those are the latest news stories. Do sign up for GB News alerts to scan the QR code on your screen right now or go to gbnews.com/alerts. Now it's time for Farage.
Good evening. I know last night we were all shocked by the stabbing that took place between Shortlands and Beckenham Junction, but it wasn't just that, because there was also 2 people stabbed at Kennington Tube in East London. A sex attacker was on the loose, being chased by police. And if we look around the rest of the UK, over the course of the last week, 2 men were stabbed today in Liverpool, in North Shields in the North East. A man was stabbed to death yesterday in Birmingham. A man was stabbed to death yesterday in Sheffield. A teenager arrested after a young boy was stabbed in the park. And you know what? It isn't just that. There is also general behavioural decline at all levels. Astonishing to hear this morning that 1 in 5 teachers last year was struck by a pupil. And I know, just talking to folk who come into London every day and travel around, that actually, knives or not, there is a feeling on trains and tubes and perhaps even sometimes buses that people just do not feel as safe and secure going around the country as they did, I'm going to say this, just before lockdown. Our general level of behaviour, our attitudes, our courtesy towards each other, and now the wholesale carrying of weapons that can kill another human being have reached an appalling level. And I'm interested to know how you feel at home. Do you feel safe when you go out now and travel on public transport? Love to get some of your feedback, please. Farage@gbnews.com. Well, to get the latest with what's going on, I'm joined by Mark White, GB News' Home and Security Editor.
Nigel, good evening. There is no doubt that in many communities right across the country, they are grappling with an increase in violent crime, in particular knife crime. And every now and again, incidents pop up that grab the public attention. That's what happened yesterday, with first this incident in Beckenham, where a man was stabbed repeatedly on that overground train. And then a few hours later, late into the evening in South London at the tube station at Kennington, 2 men then stabbed multiple times as well on the platform there. Developments have been happening throughout the day on these stories. With regard to the Beckenham investigation, the British Transport Police leading the investigation have confirmed that a 19-year-old man has been arrested on suspicion of attempted murder. A weapon has been recovered. The Kennington investigation saw the arrest of a man in his 30s this afternoon on suspicion of the attempted murder of 2 other men. So those investigations making progress, but they come really at a time when people are very and understandably concerned about violent crime. If we look at London itself, last year, the latest figures that we had to September of last year show that there were 14,000 almost knife-related incidents in London, a 22% increase on the previous year. And also, when we are talking specifically about public transport, the British Transport Police related knife crime incidents showed a 99% increase on where they were pre-pandemic, a 99% increase in knife-related offences on the trains and tubes since the pandemic itself. Well, we were speaking to some people outside Kennington Tube Station today, and they said to us that they had certainly noticed that on the Underground in particular, it's much less safe these days.
The tube, I feel fine. I feel the tube's safe. I think some empty streets can be scary, but other than that, it's pretty safe, I would say. Late at night, it's always scary, isn't it? But other than that, it's all right, yeah.
Sometimes when I'm walking home, I feel a bit scared. Like, I even turn around to see if there's anyone behind me.
I heard it all last night, and it is getting very scary, really. I'm in two minds to keep getting on the trains and the tubes.
Daytime, I'm not too bad. I live over North London, but in the night time, I wouldn't go out.
Well, following these latest horrific attacks, public attention is focused once again on knife crime. The police know that. We're also headed into the Easter weekend. Lots of people will be out. There is no doubt there will be knife-related incidents across the country. The Metropolitan Police and British Transport Police say they will have additional officers carrying out extra patrols in key areas such as rail stations, on the Underground network, and of course in other crowded places.
Mark White, thank you very much indeed. Well, joining me down the line is someone who knows all too well the tragedy that can result from this. I'm joined by Mark Brindley, trustee of the James Brindley Foundation and father of James Brindley, who was indeed stabbed to death. And Mark, I know you've been campaigning on this for some time. When you hear those figures from Mark White of a 22% increase in the last year alone of knife incidents in London, you must feel very depressed about the situation.
Yes. The statistics speak volumes, don't they? But I'm not surprised because we still have the same problems in society.
Yes, but the solutions to those problems are not short-term, are they? They're long-term. And you know, it does seem to me, you know, and I talked in the introduction not just about knife crime, but about general levels of casual violence. It does seem we're becoming a lawless society.
It feels like that. There's no question. And, you know, society has changed. It's changed dramatically since 2014, and more recently after or during COVID, after COVID, and the cost of living crisis, which seems to have exacerbated the problems we're experiencing.
Is there any one big thing you'd like the government or police to do, Mark?
Yes, it's long-term funding for long-term solutions. The problems we have are entrenched, and there needs to be that commitment, because charities like our own, when the funding comes through the police and crime commissioners, it comes through for 12 months, which isn't anything like long enough.
Okay.
It needs to be funding for 5 years or longer.
OK. Mark, thank you very much indeed for joining me on the programme. Well, in the studio with me now is Farron Alex Paul, anti-knife crime campaigner, founder of Faz Amnesty, and somebody who is physically going out onto the streets to try and make a positive difference. Farron, you were the victim of a serious knife attack yourself.
Yeah, that's correct.
Show us.
Well, all the way down my neck here, gone straight down across my collarbone.
How old were you?
At the time, I was 20 years old, but I got attacked on 2 separate occasions. So that first time I got stabbed 9 times, and then the second time I got stabbed 9 times. and I'd make it very perfectly clear it weren't gang-related, it was just me protecting...
It wasn't?
No, it weren't gang-related at all. It was me protecting a family member that was a female and me protecting another family member that was a female from someone that was aggression towards them. And, you know, I believe it got to that point because our physical altercation, maybe they thought I got the better of them, and their retaliation to that was to use a knife on me, you know? And I feel like it's just so easy for young people to retaliate with knives, and it don't help with the accessibility they have to weapons, you know? You've got mainline platforms that sell weapons online. I mean, Nigel, think about this. You have a country where it's not illegal for them to buy and sell weapons, right? But that company will still be able to basically promote their weapons in a country that's not allowed to have weapons in. And then people can still purchase on them platforms.
But the trouble is, even with kitchen knives, people can still do it on the
All right, now, Nigel, I'll say this. With kitchen knives, yes, people can get them. But, Nigel, any parent, any responsible house owner, even if you have medication, that would be in a cupboard at the top of a lock, right?
Yeah, fair point.
And now, if you do something else, look at this. If we used to make knives have a serial number in them, and I could say to you, this knife set was purchased by A, it's in this household A, but listen, if you did find one of them knives up the road in the alleyway bloodstained, you know that that knife came from house A.
That's a very, very interesting point.
And you can go to the parent and ask her, why is your house not in knife A? And you're going to get some sort of clarification to why that knife is not in your kitchen drawer and it's in the alleyway bloodstained.
Now, most of this is male. It's 90% male on male.
100%.
It's about 40% black on black. But given that the population, say, of London, the black population is about 15%, I think. So, again, it's a disproportionate problem of victims and perpetrators within the black community. A lot of that must be drugs and gangs.
Well, I feel like it's contributing factors all around, and I'd never deny that drugs ain't involved. But I do believe that these children are a product of their environment, and we're talking about estates with tower blocks with thousands of people in there, and they're living with, like, not, how can I say, like, they're living to standards, not of classes where things are accessible for them, you know? And when you do start indulging in selling drugs to make money, you know, like, there comes problems in between selling weapons, selling drugs and things like that, you know? And I just feel like some of these children, they get into certain situations and it goes beyond someone about selling drugs. Because now, that young person that's seen his older brother get stabbed to death by the guys that live in a postcode 3 streets away, they've now inherited someone that is intent on seeking revenge.
And then you get the vengeance. Now, what's interesting about your story is that rather than seeking vengeance, you've actually... I'm going to start playing some pictures now of you, and you literally go out onto the streets and take knives off people and fill up bags and take them... And folks watching this, I mean... Some of these weapons, Farron, that you are taking off people on the streets are, well, I mean, frankly, some of them are virtually swords. I don't know about knives.
Yeah.
This is a very dangerous thing that you do.
Do you know, some people do say that, and I don't take what I do for granted. Like, I do my due diligence, but I do believe that the people that I do connect with, they are in a position mentally that they're no longer going to be a part of that life, and they see me as a solution to help them get rid of that and go into the process of changing their life. But I believe this, Nigel. If you physically take a knife off someone, or they physically get in a situation where they've got to throw the knife away, then the chances are they're going to go and replace that knife. But when you get a young man that sat down with his mum and said, Mum, I don't want this knife no more. Can we contact Farron? Give him my postcode. I come to the house. To me, that is a mental transition for the better. And why are you going to want to go and buy a knife if you just handed your knife in voluntarily, you know? So I feel like that's the starting course. And
so from the journey, in a sense.
The journey, yes, it's the journey of the positive transition, you know? And I feel like that's the way forward. And when you get someone who's mentally willing to do that, it'd be easier to divert them people into life-changing things for the better.
Well, all I can say is, Farron, I hope there's a lot more of you out there and a lot more people realising the error of their ways. And honestly, well done for what you do.
Thanks for having me, Nigel.
No, not at all. No, well, what a brave lad and what a very, very good thing to do. But there's no denying it. We've got a massive problem. And when it comes to public safety, I have a feeling within a couple of years, we'll have big metal detectors we have to walk through to get onto tubes and get onto trains. Otherwise, people are not going to feel safe. Nothing is getting any better. Well, in a moment, let's have a look at Sir Keir Starmer, who launched the Labour local election campaign today and seems in some ways to admire Boris Johnson. Gosh, that's interesting.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall?
Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's live here on GB News.
Whenever Parliament is in session on a Wednesday at midday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions. We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
Affects us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio and online.
This is GB News,
Britain's news channel. Well, some of your reactions. I asked, do you feel safe when you're going out travelling on public transport? Jackie says, our streets have never been safe at night, especially for women. Yeah, I'm not pretending this is a brand new phenomenon. It just feels like it's getting a bit worse. One viewer says, we have lost the streets to criminals. I do not feel safe at all, especially at night. Steve says, I've not felt safe leaving my house for a long time. I will not go out after dark, and I'm 60 years old. And Pat says this has become worse since Stop and Search was abandoned. The controversial Stop and Search worth a programme on its own. Now, today was the launch of the Labour Party's local election campaign, done by Keir Starmer. He chose Dudley in the Black Country quite deliberately, one of those Brexit seats that swung from Labour to the Conservatives. His message, the really big message, I think, that came from Starmer's speech was, look, if you're working people, we're on your side. Almost a reach back to a more traditional kind of Labour voting base, perhaps saying, look, you know what? I might live in North London, but we're interested in you here in the Midlands, the North and in the Red Wall. What really interested me was the stuff on levelling up and the fact that he trailed into this speech that Boris Johnson had some good ideas, which seemed very interesting. Now, GB News' Christopher Hope sat down with Keir Starmer and asked him specifically, what did levelling up mean to him?
New Levelling Up Act, you've announced that in Dudley. Boris Johnson's idea. Would you give him a job in a Labour government? Have we got an interesting appointment for you?
No.
Definitely not?
Definitely not. And I'll tell you for why. Because levelling up as an idea, the sense that we need more regional equality, is really important. But in order to make that work, you need a viable plan, and you need to do the hard yards of implementing it. I'm afraid Boris Johnson didn't do that. But I intend to make sure that every area, whether it's Dudley where we are now or anywhere across the country, feels the benefit of a growing economy that I'm absolutely determined.
It's a good idea, needing better wiring, essentially.
Well, it needs a viable plan. It needs something which will actually work. But it also does, frankly, need the hard yards of delivery. And that's, I'm afraid, what we haven't seen.
Yeah.
Well, that was Sir Keir Starmer on levelling up. Well, Stella Chantakidou, public affairs consultant and former Labour advisor, joins me in the studio. Stella, what's going on? 1 minute we have Rachel Reeves saying I'm the new Mrs Thatcher, and now we've got Sir Keir Starmer saying, look, Boris actually was absolutely right about all of this. He didn't deliver it. He didn't concentrate or focus on it, which I think actually a lot of Conservatives might agree with as well. But why is Keir Starmer talking about Boris Johnson?
I would love to say that it's because he wants to tease the Conservatives who have been having a lot of infighting about, was it a good idea to get rid of Boris Johnson? Look at how Sunak is doing. But I think he's far more serious to do that kind of thing. I think what he was trying to say is acknowledge the very true fact that levelling up was a good idea. The levelling up white paper had a lot of very good analysis, which Labour Party people agreed with. However, it wasn't delivered by Rishi Sunak. He scrapped it as soon as he became Prime Minister. So this is something that's bad. And this is something that he is saying when Labour is in government, they will be addressing.
So they're the same voters that were attracted to Boris Johnson's concept of levelling up, he thinks will come back to Labour.
Well, they must. They must, because what other choice do they have? They have either this or Rishi Sunak, who has not been very satisfactory with local government. You look at HS2, look at what happened with HS2, right?
There may be other options in the mix as well, but we'll come to that at another time. I never really understood what levelling up was. I mean, I listened to Boris Johnson talking about it as I'd listened to the Northern Powerhouse from George Osborne before. Never meant anything to me. And I see Sir Keir Starmer talking about it today. I'm still none the wiser. I understand it's about regional inequality, right? And we've been having that debate as long as I've been alive.
Yeah.
But it seemed that the only thing that Starmer said that might lead to that levelling up between regions was even more devolution and even more power to local mayors. And Stella, I fail to see how that leads of itself to more economic growth.
Well, even the Tory mayor on the street said that basically the way levelling up and devolution has been approached so far has ended up with local governments having to go cup in hand to the Westminster government and ask for money to please use on the things that they need to do. Now, we know that from the levelling up fund, only 10% has been used so far. Why is that? Is this because the councils, which are completely strapped for cash, 1 in 5 local councils across England may become bankrupt in the next year, right? So their situation is very dire. Is it because that these councillors are bad and they don't want to invest in their own area and they don't want to use up this money? Or is it perhaps because the management of this fund has not been good? Is it because it's been very top-down? Is it because the Westminster government and the Treasury has been quite sclerotic with these projects and how they're
that's possible. That's possible. But you see, I don't buy the idea that just chucking money at a region, chucking taxpayers' money from a centre at a region of itself works. I'm never convinced that money will be spent effectively. I personally would rather try enterprise zones. I'd rather try tax incentives. I'd rather have a look at net zero restrictions in some part of the country. And it just seems to me that, in a sense, Starmer doesn't really have a plan.
Not really. I will tell you what is in his plan. And he has made it very clear that he's not chatting money, right? This is one thing that I really liked about the speeches. He's not trying to tell the voters, oh, don't worry, we're going to or as soon as we are in government, there will be a magic money tree, and we're going to exactly. There is no money. The austerity has taken every single last bit of it. The Tory government the Tory government has been salting the earth, as Keir Starmer said, waiting for their arrival. But
right or not?
What he did say,
Starmer going to do?
One very good policy is he's saying we are going to give councils not just more power. Some areas are already devolved, and we've seen that the local mayors have been a success. We will have more of these devolved deals for the councils to be allowed to band together, the ones that not already have that. We will also give councils more long-term funding, which will allow them to have more effective long-term plans, which we know are more cost-effective, which has been a very big issue for local services for the councils, because basically, how do you retain social care workers, for example, or the much-needed staff in children's services when these people are very often on 6 months contracts, 9 months contracts? Why would people stay in these industries? And then, of course, what happens next? You need a lot of immigrants, because what other British worker would be okay with putting up with such unsustainable working conditions?
I mean, that's more of a national debate than it is a regional debate, but I understand that, and Labour will push that incredibly hard. Overall, you know, there's no doubt that Starmer is solid and doesn't make horrendous mistakes. Says he won't eat any Easter eggs this Easter, which I find a bit dull. But kind of, it almost sums him up. I mean, I'm going to have loads of chocolate over Easter, but it sort of sums him up. It's all a bit lacklustre, isn't it?
I'm not sure it's lackluster. I would say it's very managerial, which is what he has been promising all along. That's what he and Rachel Reeves have been saying. It's not that Rachel Reeves has been saying, you know, oh, I'm going to have Thatcher's policies, because it's really not at all. She has completely rejected the framework of Margaret Thatcher. What she said is, I'm going to govern with the same iron rule, and I'm going to give you the context, the stable economy, a stable, secure economy where businesses feel secure enough to invest, and that goes also for local councils.
And I'm going to be really boring.
Well, yes, you know what? A lot of people probably want them to be very boring.
Vote Labour, vote boring. That's Stella's advice to all of you. Now, in a moment, there's been the most almighty row over the last couple of years about the fact the government have used, the Home Office have used, through private companies, over 400 hotels, which they filled with young men that have crossed the English Channel. Well, now they're cutting back on hotels. They're claiming it to be a huge success. In a minute, we find out the impact of that on the private housing rental sector.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall?
Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQs live here on GB News.
Whenever Parliament is in session on a Wednesday at midday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions. We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQs live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task. This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You might remember a friend of mine, a hotelier in North Cornwall, was rung up by a company working for the Home Office, offered a huge amount of money to close his hotel for a year and to sack all his 23 local staff. He said no, and the village of Tintagel, I think, have been very grateful to him ever since. Well, now they've decided not to book hotels. They're boasting that fewer hotels are holding young men that have crossed the English Channel on boats, but the pressure's on because the numbers that have crossed the Channel so far this year are 25% higher than they were this time last year. Well, a friend of mine, Terry Batt, had the similar experience to our hotelier, but this time with a private house in Suffolk. What happened, Terry?
Well, we had this house for rent. It's a townhouse, beautiful place. And we were told that there was a company looking for a house to rent, and we wanted to rent the house.
Yep.
And so Nicola, my wife, she sent all the details through. And then we got a phone call one day from a firm called Serco.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure you know
Familiar to viewers of this programme, yeah.
Yeah, and they said, oh, you've got this house to rent. We've looked it up on the sort of national database, and the area code fits in with our criteria. Oh, that's very good of you.
Okay.
And so I said, OK. They said, right, we will offer you a 7-year contract. They gave us a price.
We see pictures of the home for those watching this on television. Lovely place.
Oh, a lovely place. Nice. Yeah, everything's new in it.
So 7-year deal you were offered?
7-year deal. They would take care of all the maintenance, repairs, everything.
Council tax,
everything.
Utilities, literally everything.
There's not a thing for anyone to pay. Not us, not the people moving in. They would take care of the lot. And
attractive then.
Very much so. I'd like some of that.
You know, yeah. And good money.
Pretty, not as much as we would probably have wanted, to be honest. But I mean, they was pushing the fact that, come on, mate, this is 7 years.
Yeah.
You're not going to be wanting your rent for.
So they're offering you over 60 grand or whatever it is for 7 years.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I said, okay, then, who are you thinking of putting in our premises? They said, well, not really sure, which rang alarm bells with me. I said, well, I'm not prepared to hand over this beautiful house to someone you're not really sure you're going to put into, because we had a bad experience the year before. It cost me £7,000, I might add.
Right.
So I wanted to be absolutely sure who was going in there. When the guy realised that he wasn't going to get anywhere with me with that, he said, well, be honest with you, we're looking for houses for illegal migrants. And then I went, wow. So I'm ever so sorry, but...
Were you shocked?
Absolutely. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. And he was shocked that I was shocked, you know. He said, well, this 7-year contract and...
Money's money.
Money's money. Yeah, but I've got, you know, although I don't live there myself, I've got other lovely... It's in a beautiful neighbourhood. I've got other neighbours that I wouldn't want to impose this on, because where we live up in Suffolk, I mean, you walk down Great Yarmouth High Street, I promise you, Nigel, you don't hear a word of English spoken. It's all Eastern Europeans, and they're in groups of 6, 8, and it's quite intimidating, to be honest with you.
All of whom, interestingly, in that case, they're here legally.
Oh, yes.
But what you were talking about were those that are across the channel, basically.
The boat people.
So you refused them, did you?
I did, yes, absolutely. because, you know, I love my country, and I don't think... I think the British public feel very let down, if I'm honest, about the numbers coming in. I mean, a lot of my friends, a huge number of friends, I've got a big following, and we all voted Brexit. I mean, I was with you on the day.
Yeah, and you feel let down.
We do feel let down.
Yeah, yeah. Well, well done you. I bet your neighbours are pleased.
Oh, yeah, over the moon, yeah. You know, the fact that we could have said yes and...
Yeah, taking the money.
Take the money. And
no aggro, nothing to do for 7 years.
No.
Very tempting.
We weren't prepared to do that.
Any second thoughts?
No.
Good.
Absolutely none.
Well done. Terry, thanks for coming in and sharing that story.
Yep.
I mean, the problem is, there's always someone somewhere.
Oh. Well, there's one just up the road in Lowestoft, 6-bedroom house. It's going to be turned into a house of multiple occupancy.
Yeah.
And the lady that owns it was quite happy to do it.
Yeah. No, well,
we're not.
Well, our hotelier friend in Cornwall, still in his principles, he's been absolutely book solid.
Brilliant.
Ever since. And I hope you're not for want of a free drink in a local pub after what you've done up in Suffolk. Thank you very much. Now, we did approach Serco for a statement, but all they came back with was a clarification that they did not use the term illegal migrants to describe asylum seekers. Yeah, fair enough, they probably did say asylum seekers, and Terry put his own spin on that, but kind of, I think we all understand what he meant. Now it's Easter, and we talked yesterday, of course, about Easter eggs. In fact, I ate an Easter egg on air, because I've had enough of NHS Trust telling me not to eat an Easter egg on Christmas Day. Well, now the what the Farage moment is that Kit Kat, Nestle, have got, would you believe it,